squirt caps, and we have squirt bottles with meetings and different things, and it's been a real pleasure to serve as the chair and also serve as your commissioner. I'm one of the 2 at-large commissioners, so I represent you and everyone all the way to Straw Plains and Torrington and South Knoxville and Hardin Valley and everywhere in between. And boy, do we have a really diverse and interesting county with I think about 7 or 8 really different biospheres all together, and great people across the board. So I want to talk about Knox County budget, but I always say, show me your budget, I'll show you your priorities, okay? That's how the regular world works. And one of the most important documents in Knox County finance is the one that no one reads except for John and I think. And that is called the CAFR. Anybody know what the CAFR is? No one knows what the CAFR is because that's the one that nobody reads. So we have a budget, we go through a budget process, I'll talk about that in a second. But the one that really shows how Knox County is doing and how your government is doing is called the CAFR. And it's the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And it comes out, and if you really want to sleep, this is the one to have. It comes out every January, February, and it's essentially, it takes about 5 or 6 months to close the books. Our fiscal year starts July 1st, it runs all the way to June 30th, and when they close the books in July, August, some stuff happens in September, October, they clear it up, they put this huge report together, and this is essentially how did we do last year. And it is a really detailed and really interesting thing. So if the county mayor and the commission approved a budget of X dollars for the school system, which Ms. Warren is charged with figuring out what to do with, how did they really do? You can look and see, did they really spend your money wisely? You can look at every department, you can literally go through and sort of look back and say, did we do what we were supposed to do? Now, for as many people as involved in government, and as many of you all who care about where your tax dollars go, this is the one thing that you ought to be reading before we talk about the thing that you probably read. So I encourage you, you can find it online. It really shows, and sometimes we look through it and go, wait a second, as we look at the next budget, we'll go back and go, wait a second, Department X, you said last year you were going to do this. Clearly didn't do that, so why do you want us to give you more money this year? And so it's a good way to kind of look backwards before you look forward. So I encourage everybody to look that up. Now, I'm going to pass around, before I talk about the budget itself, I've got sort of 2 seconds. I do not have as many copies as our people, so if you're in a group of 2 or 4 or whatever, find it out, because I've only got so many copies. But I'll be happy to email it to Wayne, and he can email it out to everybody. This is the process that I just want to walk through the process of how your money is spent here in Knox County. So by charter, it's interesting, the county mayor has one job that he has to do, okay? That absolutely has to do by charter, and that is to present a consolidated budget to the legislative branch. So our mayor is the executive branch, the commission is the legislative branch, so we're the Congress of the county, so to speak. And by June 1st every year, the mayor must present the commission with a consolidated proposal. This is not the final budget, this is just his idea of what we ought to do with all of your tax dollars. And that comes to us. That was presented this last Tuesday morning. Mayor Jacobs presented that to the commission. We were supposed to be at the Farn Sports Park, but it got flooded, so we went downtown to the city county building and did a great job presenting that to us. Then the legislative branch, the county commission, has to consider that, and we must pass a budget by June 30th, regardless, to start our fiscal year in July 1. We've never had a situation, and I don't remember or know of a situation where we didn't pass a budget by June 30th. I'm not sure what would happen. I don't know if there would be a mini Knox County shutdown or what, but it's never really happened. So we have to do that. You got some more copies this way? Anybody else? And so we must pass that budget. And there's right now it's scheduled to do 3 big steps, or 4 big steps. First, this week, the mayor presents us the budget. Then on Monday, we will have our first budget hearing, our public budget hearing, where anyone can come and ask any question. All the department heads are there, the mayor's there, the whole team's there, and everyone gets a chance to say, you know, what it is. We have a public forum. You can sign up for that by Friday, this Friday, through the commission office. So if you look at the budget, which is now online, and you can see it, you know, every line item, you could come and you can ask and say, why are you spending too much on this or not enough on this? You can ask questions. You can encourage your commissioners to spend more in this area, less in this area. You can have your voice here. Now, this will be my 5th budget. Now, I've been through 2 as a commissioner and 2 preparing to be a commissioner, where I sat through the hearings. In 4 budget sessions, less than $8 dozen people have ever come in those last 4 years and asked a single question. It's amazing. We spent $877 million, $890 million. I'll get to the number in a second. A lot of money, and very, very few people are. But you have a choice. You have a choice to come. You have a choice to say whatever it is you want at that third budget hearing. Then we're going to have our regular May commission workshop and our commission meeting, and then we are probably going to ask questions there. We have a second and a third hearing scheduled, but oftentimes if there's not a lot of controversy, if nobody shows up, there's not a lot of questions, we get all of our questions answered, we may move that third budget hearing up to the second. Just gives the financial staff more time. The longer we push it closer to June 30th, the more work it causes the staff, and quite frankly, if everybody's got the questions answered, then get on with it. We try to be as efficient as possible. So Monday, June 7th is the second one. Monday, June 14th is the third and final. And at the third and final meeting, we will gather and we have to do three things. First, we have to approve the budget as either presented or amended. So the mayor presents it, and at any point during that final hearing, John can say, I would make a motion to spend $200,000 more on parks to put in some new playgrounds. And then he has to get 6 votes, and we have the ability to amend that. If he gets those 6 votes, Chris Caldwell, our finance director's hair will catch on fire, and he will say, where do you want to find that money? And we'll go back and forth and debate it. But it can be debated and amended during that process, but we have to finish with a final vote of that consolidated budget. Then, the second thing we have to do is we have to vote on the tax rate. And I'll talk about that in just a second. And then the third thing we have to vote on is the 5-year capital plan. So if you have any kind of road project in Knox County or major project in Knox County, chances are if it's not part of the capital plan, it's not getting done, unless it's a TDOT road or some other entity. So the 5-year capital plan says, what are the big expenditures? These are usually roads, bridges, maybe community centers, other things like that. And it needs to be on that capital plan. Now that changes all the time, but you've got to sort of get it on there to start with it. And then on this sheet, there is a ton of highlights. These come from the mayor. I did not write these. This is the mayor and his team. It sort of gives you the highlights of his proposed budget. And again, you can look at those online. You can look at the budget online and ask me questions. The second part of the sheet, just to walk through with everybody, is our 3 different charts. First and foremost, our Knox County property tax rate. As you can see, over the last 20 plus years, 22 years, our tax rate has been as high as $3.32 per 100 of assessed value of your home. It has gone down, and it is currently $2.12. Now, residential homes are assessed at a different level than commercial properties like this one, and so it's talk to the registered deeds and the property assessor about how those formulas work. That's a whole other speech. And we do have reappraisal coming up, I think next year. Reappraisals are next year.
The assessor will be doing that, yes.
Yeah, so we'll be doing a whole
Not the registrar. I just safeguard the deed to your home. I don't collect property taxes, nothing.
Just play market. But your house is assessed at a certain value. Per $100 of that value, you pay $2.12. You add it up, et cetera, et cetera. One of the interesting things is when we get to that reappraisal, it'll be a big conversation because the state of Tennessee has a law that says that whenever you do a reappraisal year, you must finish revenue neutral. So if the value of your house goes up, because you did a bunch of improvements or built and your neighborhood is brand new, then the value of your house must go down in some way, shape, or form. So there are lots of cases in which there is no floor. So there are people in Knox County that used to pay $800 for their house every year, and they're now paying $500. And you're going to pay more, and it has to level out. And really, the theory behind this is that they don't want, our lawmakers are pretty smart, they don't want governments like ours to use reappraisals to then raise revenue. They want you to either raise revenue by your tax rate or by your tax rate, because then if they just used reappraisal to kind of say, oh, everybody's house went up a little bit more, houses would skyrocket, it would be a really bad financial position. So it's kind of a smart way to kind of level things out and say, look, if you're going to raise more revenue, go out to people and talk about it and change your tax rate, but don't just jack everybody's house prices up. So again, a whole nother discussion. But our current tax rate, as you can see, is $2.12. It's been that way for the last 4 years. It's being proposed at $2.12 again this year. And then the bottom here are two charts. The first one is, what is our tax rate compared to the other big metro areas? So in the state of Tennessee, we have essentially 7 big metros, and there are Shelby, which is Memphis, Shelby County, Memphis, Davidson County, which is Nashville, Hamilton County, which is Chattanooga, Rutherford, Murfreesboro, Williamson County is Franklin, Knox County, Knoxville, and Sevier County, Sevierville. And we have the second lowest. So the highest is Memphis, always, and they have a population of about 1 million people. And then the lowest is Sevier County, and theirs is 1.86. They have a population of just under 100,000 people. So it gives you a sense of where do we rank. This does not include any city taxes. So if you live in the city of Knoxville, you have another rate, but also in Nashville, they have a couple like Franklin and a couple other ones that are different rates. So this doesn't include any of the city-related areas, just the county. And then on the bottom here on the left is, or on the right, is the general obligation debt. So our debt is rolled together. It's the school debt and it is the county debt all in one big bucket. So there's a way to divvy that up, but I just wanted to show in general. For the last, since 2011, it'll show here our bonded debt in 2011 was $690 million. It is risen to, it's 701 bonded debt, and then of course it shows the budget and the debt service. So I'm going to talk about this in a second, but you can see on this chart here the percent of debt to the percentage of debt to the budget and the bonded debt to the budget, and it's varied. It's gone down a little bit in total, but the total price has risen of how much debt we hold. And this is a whole big different conversation of, is it good debt, is it bad debt, is it too much, is it too little? We have this debate all the time. One thing I would also show you, and I'm happy to email it to the group and send it out, is we've done a couple of chairman's briefings this year. We're going to do a few more. These are topics that are too big to do during a commission meeting. So we take a big 3-hour, 2-3-hour chunk of time and we really go through the finances. We did one in February, I believe this was, and we did a chairman's briefing on debt. And this was a public meeting. We held it, we recorded it on Zoom, I think. And it was all about debt in the general fund, and it was really informative. And if you really are like a policy wonk and you really want to dig into this stuff and you love this stuff like I do, then you'll love it. If you don't, it'll put you to sleep, and I can't help that. But if you go through, it's really interesting because it goes through, and the finance department took a lot of things and walked through and talked about appraisals. But it gets into really interesting charts like this one, where you can see our property tax has dropped, the tax rate has dropped, but the collections have risen at the same time. So some of that has to do with natural growth, some of that has to do with appraisals, some of that there's 1,000 variables. But there's a lot of charts and graphs, and it sort of talks about how much property, 1 penny on the property tax costs, and how much our debt is, and on and on. So anyway, if you're interested in that, happy to send it to you. But we do spend a lot of time on that. Okay, now comes the fun, interactive part. Everybody ready? Nobody ready? Anybody ready? Okay. Our total budget, proposed budget, total proposed budget for fiscal year 22 that will start in July is, $893 million. $574,322. So $893 million of your tax dollars. Okay, here's the fun part. What is our number? This is a Q&A. What is our #1 expenditure?
Schools.
Yeah. Okay, it gets harder, but that's the easy part. Sorry. Our schools, $542 million goes to schools. Now, what's interesting is the school board goes through a very vigorous budget process, just like we do with their finance team, all their departments. They go through their own budget hearings, and they approve the budget, and then they send it across the street. Now, certainly, the county finance department and the school finance department work very closely to say, kind of, where do we stand? This year, there's all kinds of extra money from the federal government and some other stuff, and in a year where everybody thought the world would tank financially because of the pandemic, with the exception of 1 month, every single month outperformed the month prior and got better and better and better to the point where we were like, okay, seriously, like, what is everybody spending money on? Because it was off the charts. So this year was not as contentious as other years have been. thankfully. But they approve a budget, they work with us, and then they send it to the mayor, and it gets part of the whole package. Interesting enough, the way the relationship works, and this is a legal relationship, once we approve the budget, we essentially cannot tell the school board what to do with that budget. That's the school board's responsibility. So we write one big giant blank check over 100,000 transactions between now and next year. And it's up to your school board representative to figure out how to use that. And your school administrator, I'm not using that word. No, not administrator.
Superintendent.
Excuse me.
Bob Thomas.
Your superintendent and your school board did. So they may say, we really want to do this or that, or move money around. It's not our, once we approve it, it's not our thing. It's interesting, every single meeting, you'll come to and watch a commission meeting, there's things about the schools. We're really not allowed to not approve it. Like, if they put it on there, we approve it, you go talk to your school board rep if you think they're not spending their money wisely. It's a really weird relationship. So it's the only board of sorts that I've been on where you have fiscal responsibility but no fiscal management. And so it's an interesting relationship, but another thing. Okay, number two, line item.
Highways.
Sure. Who said it? No, not pensions.
Oh, no, not pensions.
Sheriff. Public safety,
We don't have
$96 million.
pensions.
Now, it's more than just the sheriff. It's the sheriff, it's our jails, it's our public defender's office, it's our DA's operation, it's anything, it's our jail, it's our court systems,
Oh, I didn't
it's
know we
everything to do
approved
with public safety, justice, that whole world, $96 million. Okay, this is where it gets fun. Third largest line item. And if you know, don't say it, but if you don't know, guess. Roads? No. Third largest. Anybody? Come on, gotta yell it out.
Parks.
Parks? No.
Health Department.
No.
Highway.
No. Whoa.
Well, you're
Got it.
grouping.
Okay. Debt service. Third line is our debt. So remember that chart over here? What happens when you have $700 million in debt on an $893 million budget? You pay a lot of money, and you got to do it. $74 million every year to keep the credit cards live. Now, this helps pay for schools and roads and all the other things, but it also pays for if you bring in less revenue, whatever the case may be. $74 million every year, third largest budget item. Yeah, whoa. Most people don't realize that. We talk about it every year. So why is that? This is a really interesting debate. We have this all the time.
No one is on a balanced budget.
Well, no, the budget's balanced all the time. Where's the tax rate? Where's the cost of goods and services? That smoothie cost a lot more 22 years ago. So everybody has said, we'll never raise your taxes, but don't pay attention if we run up your debt. Now, it's the same general percentage, right? It's 8-9%, it's about 10% of our budget. But the community has never said, right now the community said, we don't care, that's fine, we can pay our bills, we're okay with the debt. And at some point will the community say, maybe we don't want that much debt, and we don't want $74 million every year to just keep it serviced. There's inside of that number, there's a zillion little things that we find all the time. There was a period of time where some schools were financed with like a synthetic debt, where it was like 20 years of just paying interest, and it never touched the principals. Bad stuff. There's a lot of that mixed thing. So every year it goes down a little bit, it goes up a little bit, but nobody's really tackling that. That's a big conversation in our nation right now, is how much debt is too much debt. And nobody wants to deal with it. This is the third rail of Knox County politics, and that's a whole other discussion. We'll have for another time. So anyway, after that, fourth line item. Anybody have a guess? It's a tie. I'll just tell you at this point. It gets a little harder. It's a tie between public health and welfare. That would be our health department, some of the social services, a lot to do with health in schools, health in jails, a lot of that stuff, and then engineering and public works. So $23 million for both of those. So roads, bridges, public works, and then public health and welfare. After that, it's really interesting. It's outside of general purpose schools, and I don't know why. $27 million is for central cafeterias. So like all the cafeteria stuff. It's federal money. Okay, so it's pass-through. Okay. Beyond that, $20 million is finance, and that could be a number of different departments. $13 million general administration, $7 million transfer, $6 million social, cultural, and recreation, $8 million hotel motel, which does tourism, $4.4 million for solid waste, your garbage. $4.4 million, because we also run convenience centers, and we it costs, you know, I mean, you pay taxes to use that, but there's no additional fee in those. So every time those dumps go and all these tires, and I'll tell you what, our budget last year went way, way up, because what was everybody doing? They were home, renovating, they were stuck in their houses, and they cleaned up their garages. And I think we almost doubled the amount of waste that we took for those convenience centers, and tires, paint, all the